close this. Play. Tampa Bay Spirits presents Haunted Campfire Tales Live. Welcome. Gather around the fire. Get comfortable, but not too comfortable. The true ghost tales are about to unfold.
Ooh. Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Joan.
I'm Les.
I'm Beth.
I'm Robin.
I'm Joy.
That's Jess.
Hi, Jesse. Oh, you're
You're muted.
muted.
You're still muted. I was like, she's not saying
We
hello.
have technical difficulties.
Hi,
I
Jess.
totally before Robin. I'm Jess.
You're right on cue. Hi, Marjorie. And you're Marjorie.
And Paul
Hi,
says,
Marjorie.
hello, Ghost Hunters Live.
Hello, Paul.
Hello,
Hey,
Paul.
Marjorie.
You know, Paul, if Ghost Hunters were on live, this is exactly what it would be like.
Look here, CW. Hi,
CWR says,
CW.
greetings, one and all. Greetings, CW. Glad to have you in the audience.
Welcome to the zoo.
Yes. All right.
Tonight, we're very lucky to have a special guest with us live from Canada. And his name is Richard Schwindt. Hello, Richard. Welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Oh, look, Kelly Marshall
Oh,
is here
Kelly.
too. Kelly is here
Hi,
too.
Kelly.
I'm sorry, I'm going to sneeze.
Okay, that's nothing to sneeze at.
Please mute us.
So, Richard, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, I am a retired psychotherapist and social worker. I had about a 40-year career. I worked in downtown Toronto and I worked in Kingston, but I had a very interesting 16 years in a small town in northwestern Ontario called Sioux Lookout. And it was a very visceral, intense experience. And it was a place where the way people envision the world was, and in many ways, far more spiritual. It's also a town that's pretty much split between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. So I worked myself in a large Indigenous organization for 5 years and traveled around a number of the reserves in Northwestern Ontario. It's funny what pops into your head, but I'm thinking about a time that, have you ever heard the expression whistle down the northern lights? I went to the furthermost community in Ontario on Hudson Bay, and I walked to the north end of town because I wanted to be the more northernmost person in Ontario for a minute. Big, bright northern lights. And I thought, well, if I was ever going to whistle them down, this is the time. So I started whistling, and they started coming. It freaked me totally out. And I don't know what happened, but I stopped whistling right away and turned and ran, to be honest. But it was a very interesting 16 years. And while I was there, I started studying hypnosis. We had a couple of teachers come in who did hypnosis and ended up training with a man named John Toslin in Winnipeg, who was very much a spiritual individual, an individual who was considered a shaman in the Hawaiian tradition and a shaman in the Plains Cree tradition. Fascinating man, and he was my first teacher in hypnotherapy. I later went on to join the Canadian Society for Clinical Hypnosis and reached an advanced level with them. And I know one of the things we discussed talking about tonight was past life regression. So I thought I could give people just a very brief primer on hypnosis, because I know a lot of people are interested in hypnosis for a variety of reasons, medical reasons and psychological reasons, but also as different ways of exploring who we are. And we talked about past life regression. So I was going to briefly explain three or four quick things to understand about hypnotherapy and hypnosis and how it works. Thing number one is that we have an unconscious mind, and it is always part of our decision making. It is always driving us. It is always guiding us physically, and it contains memory and wisdom. We may or may not be very good at accessing it ourselves, but it's always there and it's always driving us. When you are interviewing someone in a hypnotic trance, you are talking directly to their unconscious mind. And sometimes, if they begin to drift or something goes awry, you can address the unconscious mind. I am speaking to your unconscious mind right now, and it'll snap people right back into engagement with the hypnotherapist. The second concept I was going to talk about is trance, which is a very normal human response. We are often in trance when we're driving. We're often in trance when we're watching a TV show or watching a movie. You get engaged in the movie, you're watching the movie, and you're into the movie. Maybe you're emotional because of something that's happening in the movie. That's a trance state. And trance states can be deepened. People vary a little bit in terms of how much they can go into trance. But generally speaking, you can bring people down to depths where they have, I think the last three in the stages of trance are, last four are analgesia, anesthesia, negative hallucinations, and positive hallucinations, which is sometimes what you see when you watch a stage hypnotist. And one of the things the stage hypnotist will do is ask everybody to stand up and hold, hold their hands a little bit like this. And the stage hypnotist will start talking and say, now just imagine that I've tied a helium balloon to your left hand. Just feel it pressure up, 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 up. Oh, the helium balloon is lifting your hand. And now I'm putting a book, a very, very heavy book in your right hand, a very, very heavy book. And I'm putting another balloon on your left hand. And now there's 3 or 4 balloons. They're just lifting, lifting, lifting. And the books are heavy. Oh, they're so heavy. And what you'll see are some people struggling and some people are like this. And again, it's what they're looking for are the people most hypnotizable in the group. The anesthesia, I've seen everything from abdominal surgery to childbirth in videos of hypnosis. One of my teachers had a video of her 15-year-old son, who's your typical geeky teenage boy, and she put him in a trance, removed the trance, except for his arm, and then removed the trance except for his hand. So he's like, "Oh, Mom, what are you doing now?" Then she took a 25 gauge hypodermic needle, pushed it right through his hand, so the point came at the other side, and he's laughing. He thinks it's funny, and then she pulls it out again. And I was sitting beside an anesthesiologist in the group when we were watching this video, and he was like, "How'd she do that?" And so it's trance states do a couple of things. They enhance suggestibility. So someone, we're normally a little on the suggestible side anyway. When we have rapport with an individual and they suggest something, we're more inclined to believe what they're suggesting. When you're in a trance state, you're more suggestible still. If you've established a rapport with the client and maybe some agreement on purpose and intent of the hypnosis, then the suggestibility again is enhanced. So when someone's in hypnosis, they are more suggestible, in a state of relaxation. It is a very alert state, believe it or not, even though just to give you an example, as I prattle on here tonight, you may miss some of my words, you may miss this and that. If I was doing an interview with someone in a hypnotic trance, I would be using language differently, but I guarantee they would hear every single word I would say, and they would take it very literally. So when someone is hypnotized and in a trance, they call that an induction because it's inducted, and it's inducted in lots of different ways. An induction can be verbal, it can be physical. I trained with a dentist once, and he could put you in a hypnotic trance just by jerking your arm around a little bit. And the most famous of all medical hypnotists was a fellow named Milton Erickson, and he famously could just put you in a trance with a handshake. And that's, I used to play with that. Therapists don't touch people, dentists do. So I never use the physical ones. I always use the verbal ones. But dentists don't have a lot of time to mess around with long inductions. So they've got a couple of little tricks that are just bang, bang, and you're in a trance. So it's quite fascinating, but it opens up a lot of territory. It allows you to explore quite a number of different things. If you were doing what I was doing, which is psychotherapy, then you were using it as a means to an end, like a tool. Someone may have come in about a trauma or a mood issue or a family issue or anxiety, something along that line. And you are, a tool in your toolbox is hypnosis. I used it when my clients were willing, often on things like phobias, often on things like stress, elevated cortisol, pain management, sort of physical stress, because, if you are able to induce a trance and help someone get into a deeper trance, then they are very much going to relax. And at that moment, you can plant a strategic suggestion. You now know that you can relax anytime you choose. And just by going into a trance state, into the state, you can achieve relaxation. You know this, your unconscious mind knows this, and it will know this, and it won't forget this. And again, repetition is part of hypnosis. Sometimes literalness, use very literal language. So everybody with me so far?
Yeah, we're with you.
You didn't hypnotize us, did you?
As I said, we should all call each other
And
afterwards and see if we're walking like chickens.
one other thing about hypnosis to understand is any legitimate hypnosis teacher starts with a session on ethics, because it is something that can be abused. My original teacher was so good at putting people in trances that he was asked to by a radio station in Winnipeg to do a trance thing, a trance, and what he would say to put someone in a trance. And he refused. He said, I don't know who's driving and I don't know who's out there, and it would not be ethical for me to do that. And the interviewer said, "Well, I just turned off my recorder. I'm curious. Tell me what you would do." So he did. And what he didn't know was that the interviewer did not turn off the recorder and then played his trance induction on the Winnipeg radio.
Oh,
Cars went off the road. All kinds of awful things happened, and nobody got hurt apparently. But it's a little hint of the kind of power that can be delivered unethically. So, very much ethics are part of, and hypnotizing someone without their permission is deeply unethical.
just a minute. Let me break in with a few remarks. Paul Hollis, I feel like a stormtrooper now. These are not the droids I'm looking for. Joe Concho says, this is fascinating, Richard. Kelly Marshall said, that was awful about what that one radio host did.
Yes.
Oh, so CW has a question. So can you make a person kill another? It'd be pretty easy to make me kill certain people, I think. Just saying. I don't mean Rob.
Oh,
There's a bit of a cliche about hypnosis that you can't make somebody do what they wouldn't normally do. And, it's on a very basic level, there's some truth in it. But again, we're suggestible. It could be a tool in manipulating people. It could be a tool used by a salesperson. It could be a tool used by an abusive person.
Wow.
And so that's why the emphasis on ethics is so profound in hypnosis.
Can I ask you a question? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can I ask you a question, Richard? If people do like past lives regression, right? How can you know if that hasn't been suggested to you? You know what I mean? Like, how can you know if that's a real past life regression and it hasn't just been suggested to you? Do you understand what I'm getting at?
Let me talk about that a little bit, because I've done them, I've experienced them, and the thing to understand is that our brains are creative. They create patterns. They work in metaphors, especially the unconscious mind is very metaphorical in the way it works, and it can be very creative. And in the context of a clinical regression, what I would normally do, just to tell you a little bit about the dynamics, I would use an approach called timeline therapy. And it involves once a person's in a trance state, bringing them up and suggesting the presence of a line down below with the future in one direction and the past in the other. And you might ask them, if we were to go back to the place where you needed to learn a lesson, or you locked in a negative emotion, or locked in a negative belief system, where would it be in your past, at your birth, or I put that wrong. Would it be before, during, or after your birth? So after your birth, you would say, at what age? Someone might say 5 or 8. And you would ask the unconscious mind, because it's the unconscious mind driving this. And you don't know in advance where the person is going to go, because you are trusting their unconscious mind and you don't want to suggest it. A lot of hypnosis is being very unspecific. And just imagine what it might look like down below you, because you floated them up above the timeline and looking down. So you actually do as little as possible to suggest what their experience is going to be and elicit from them what their experience is. So they could decide on a time after the birth. Occasionally, there's an experience during their birth that they recollect, or before their birth. And you might ask then, how many lifetimes ago would that be? And again, I don't know how legitimate, whether we're talking about metaphor or reality, because as a clinician, what I would be wanting to do is help a person with a present problem. I have a little bit of a saying, you never go back as a tourist. You go back to learn something. So I'll give you an example of something that happened to me. I went back a couple of lifetimes and I had a sense of where I was. It was somewhere tropical. I had an idea that it was in the 1800s sometime, and there was a plague, and everybody was dying in the plague except me. And I felt guilty about being strong and healthy while everybody died in the plague. And in an interesting little, since you did ask for a little woo-woo, I also sensed I was black. I was a black man. And I was back in the early 1800s. And I was strong. Now, what the therapist did with me was they helped me to understand that it was okay to be strong. It was okay to help others and not succumb yourself. And at that time, I was director of a mental health agency and probably the most suicidal jurisdiction in Canada. And, you know, I was fortunate in my health and my life, and I was working with a lot of very, very troubled and unhappy people at risk. And so the lesson for me to take from the past was it was okay to remain strong, to help others. It was okay to take care of myself and set those boundaries. So the therapist brought me back, having internalized some of those beliefs. So from a counseling clinical point of view, I was able to bring something back that was of value while having had this experience, which was very sensory, because we're always dealing with our senses in hypnosis. We take things in through our senses. You do the induction through people's senses, and being in a past life regression or any kind of regression is very much a sensory experience. Sometimes you see things, sometimes you hear things, sometimes you just sense that it's around you. Now, the interesting little bit of woo-woo here is that many years later, this regression would have happened about 23, 24 years ago. Many years later, I went on 23andMe, and one of the questions my teacher had taught me to ask is, are you reliving past lives, or are you reliving an ancestor's life? And anyway, guess who had a black ancestor in the Caribbean in the 1800s?
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was, that was actually quite fascinating.
That was an
Wow.
eye-opener. And here's a good question from Joe Conjal. He said, Richard, do you yourself believe people can have past lives? But you just kind of answered that. It's like,
I'm agnostic on it.
Yeah.
As a therapist, I was always focused on my clients' needs.
right.
And whether it was real or metaphor was less
Right.
important than the lesson being brought from the past. It was very striking when I did them, how ordinary a lot of them were. Sometimes women went back and found themselves being men, and men went back and found themselves being women. The experience that people drew from was boring, or just very simple. Somebody said something or somebody did something and it wouldn't have sounded like anything. But children and people often internalize very small things, and they will take something small, some small event, and it will come to symbolize things. A common one that came up was around trust. I'm sitting watching TV, and my dad went out the door, and he was going to take me out, just for a walk, but he left without me. And somebody's 5 years old, or regressed to a point of being 5 years old, and they remember that. And all it was is their dad going out. And how do you feel that's affected you today? I don't trust people. I have trouble establishing relationships of trust. And this, is a problem in my life. Now, you also do a little bit of therapy in these situations. And again, you're doing therapy with someone who's regressed through their unconscious mind. And it's a very unusual experience, but it's quite powerful. And what I would normally have done in one of those situations is, thinking back, going along your timeline, is there someone you do trust? My grandfather was straight to me. He was always good to me, and he always told me the truth, and he was always there for me. So tell me about your grandfather. What did you learn from your grandfather? Now, knowing that was then and this is now, can you bring forward your learnings from your grandfather into the present and make them part of your belief now? You might have them go into a cloud and release the negativity. You might have them go to check any time on the timeline where they experience mistrust and change it. You might even have them go into the future to any time they would have experienced mistrust and ask them then to release it. So there's a lot of releasing, there's a lot of internalization. It's just therapy on a different level. So the furthest I ever went back was somewhere, I think, in medieval or even before times, where I was just some crazy soldier who got stabbed in the chest. And if you know me, I have congenital heart disease, and I have a lot of scars on my chest. It looks like I don't know what it looks like, but it's not clean there. There's a lot of scar tissue, and so again, metaphor, reality, ancestor, something that came through the different stages of history. I don't really know, but I do know that, and I can't even remember what the lesson of that particular regression was, but I do remember just being a terrified soldier who got stabbed in the chest. And if you begin to understand how powerful these metaphors are in our life, how we take things in through our senses, how our unconscious mind works, it really is a key to understanding how we can change our lives and make our lives better, or address things like trauma or abuse, or any of the things, or loss, any of the things that trouble human beings in their lives.
It's really interesting the way you've explained it. I mean, I understand it better than I've ever understood it before. I mean, the whole thing, and I can see how important it is. Kelly asked, did you feel physical pain when you were stabbed?
I imagined it, Kelly. I remember it, and it wasn't bad, because I would have been in a deep hypnotic state, and you tend not to feel pain in a deep hypnotic state. But I remember the shock of it, and it's been a number of years since I had that particular hypnotic experience, but it again was something that was meant to teach a lesson in the present. And your unconscious mind knows this. Going back to the question, are you going to suggest something to people? You avoid that at all costs.
What?
You definitely want the unconscious mind to make the decision about where anybody goes. There's one other thing I should mention about this, because it's another part of understanding how regressions work. There's a concept in hypnotherapy called an abreaction. So, as you can imagine, if I said to somebody today, we're considering a regression, and they said to me, well, this terrible thing happened to me when I was 8 years old, or I think something really terrible happened in the past, and it frightens me. I would hate to go back and relive that horrible experience. What they teach you in hypnosis is lots of ways of managing that. There are some therapists who do abreactions deliberately. I never did, and I never would. But I'll tell you two ways that abreactions are handled. One is with the timeline. You float people above the timeline, looking way, way down there, and go back to the point where you locked in the negativity or negative emotions or negative beliefs. People maybe go back. Maybe they go to the trauma. Maybe they don't. People are often surprised when they don't go to the worst possible place, but that may be because it's already fairly conscious. But anyway, if they do go back to a very traumatic place, you lower them slowly. I'm going to lower you very slowly, slowly, slowly. Oh, don't stop. Whoop, up, all the way up above the timeline. And the emotion will literally appear and disappear as you do that. Another common approach I used to use was taking people along a path by a large field. And what I would say is, this is a suggestion. If they said, I definitely want to deal with the issue with my boss who's abusive and cruel and saying terrible things to me, and just look out there in the field, way, way out there, and you just see two people. And if it's you and your boss, try getting a little bit closer and a little bit closer, and just let me know when you begin to feel it. Oh, okay, I'm feeling it. All right, tell me what you're feeling. Well, I'm scared and I'm angry at the same time, and I feel helpless because he's being such a jerk and he's saying all these terrible things. Okay, well, would you like to change this? What would you like to say to your boss? What would you like to do to your boss? I mean, it's all up here, right? So, now this can get really interesting if you're ever dealing with if I'm going to be really blunt here, things like rape or sexual abuse. Occasionally you can give someone permission to do what they'd like to do, and it can get pretty hairy, let me tell you. But you're giving
Well,
the
I can
power
tell you
back.
what I would want to do literally, so that would get very hairy.
Well, exactly. So, but in the scenario I was mentioning, you would try and create the scenario where the emotion itself is minimized, that fear, that anger, whatever, but the individual is allowed. Now your boss is standing there. What do you want to say to your boss? Well, I want to tell him to F off. I want to tell him this and that and the next thing. And, how angry I am with him. And I want him to go away. Well, you can do that. You can do that. You have the ability to make him go away. And
You're empowering people.
Yeah, exactly. And within, in conscious mind therapy, you might rehearse the behavior. Okay, you're going to meet your boss tomorrow. What would you like to say? What do you, I have a little routine for that. What do you anticipate them saying? What do you anticipate triggering you? What do you anticipate experiencing in your body? What do you anticipate thinking in your thoughts? When you go there tomorrow, bring your observant self and afterwards, see if it went as you expected. And, again, it's empowering because it gives someone something to do. We're at our worst when we feel helpless. That's
Exactly.
a terrible feeling. Being
Marjorie
helpless.
Marjorie has a question. Richard, you say you're an agnostic about this. If past life regression isn't real, are the memories people experience purely due to imagination?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. And it, the, the person who taught me how to do it, again, I've mentioned he was a very spiritual individual, a shaman. Even he said the same thing, that um, it was, he didn't know. And in some ways, I wouldn't want my belief or disbelief to stand in the way of what somebody's unconscious mind was doing to heal. If my job is to help guide them through hypnotic experience, then that's my job. And in addition to helping guide them through the experience, I'm also there, or always was there, as a psychotherapist. So my job was to help them psychologically with whatever problem they brought to me. This Some people think past life regressions are complete hooey. And when a couple of my staff, before I learned this, came to me and said they wanted to do it, I said, not in my agency, and they kind of begged me to go and get this training. Finally, oh yeah, okay, fine, I'll go. And I thought it was hooey until I didn't. And when I saw what you could achieve through learning this, I was very, very impressed. There's lots of metaphoric tools that are extremely powerful, and they're real to the unconscious mind. So if you are in that person's journey, and maybe guiding that journey, maybe influencing that journey, using metaphors, which as a writer I love anyway. It's a very good therapeutic approach for a writer, especially one with a good imagination, because sometimes the unconscious mind is guiding, and sometimes you're guiding. That example of the boss in the field off in the distance and approaching it. You're pushing that a little bit. You're pushing someone to address their fears, to say what they need to say, to destroy the power of the boss over them, so that they are less terrified and anxious at work. So
What you said about your own past life regression, and you said how it helped you in the present. There was a very real way that it helped you in the present. And it's interesting because whether you believe in it or you don't believe in it, it's going to be helpful. But if you do believe in it, I know that last month that Beth taught us about the Akashic record, and that kind of goes hand in glove with what she taught us about the Akashic record, which says that if you have a past life and something happens, the whole point is to learn from that experience in this life. So it works whether you're actually going back to a past life or if it's just your mind bringing you back to a past that can help heal your present. Am I understanding that correctly? If it's, it can work both ways, right? Whichever way you look at it.
yeah, I think it can, and that's a really good example. It's the same idea, and it would have the same benefits. And again, somebody else might be struck by the metaphor or be a doubter or whatever,
Right.
but they can't deny the lessons that emerge from the experience.
Right.
If you do believe in past lives, if you do believe in things that are there in the past that you take forward into different lives, all the better. It's about, in the now, we want to be better. We want to learn, and people learn in different ways.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. I just found that so interesting that you said that, and that then you were able to say that that person actually lived was even more amazing. You
Well,
know,
as I said, I can't really claim to know with any certainty. I do know the power of the approach, and I do know that um, you access sides of yourself in this process that are very, very striking, and it is a way of creating or meeting some of your goals psychologically. It is a very powerful tool, and most people can um, learn self hypnosis. It isn't that hard to learn, and if you, for example, had a goal for yourself, some people want to lose weight, some people want to quit smoking, some people want to be less frightened of certain things. Uh, you can learn to achieve a trance state, create a positive suggestion, because I was taught positive suggestions are the best one. I'll give you a quick example of that. For smoke ending hypnosis, I was taught that you wouldn't say something like, "You're no longer a smoker, you don't smoke anymore, you'll never smoke again," because your unconscious mind is so literal, it would hear "smoke, smoke, smoker," you know. uh, and on the other hand, and just notice how much your body loves inhaling clean, fresh air, how your lungs thrive with the oxygen coming into them, how you breathe deeply and how good it feels. And from now on, you choose only to breathe clean, fresh air, to feel clean, fresh air in your lungs. And your body thanks you. And just notice how good it feels, how the oxygen goes into your lungs and into your heart and through your veins and into your capillaries and all through your body. Clean, fresh, oxygenated blood, refreshing you, enlivening you, making you feel better, healing you. This is a wonderful, wonderful sensation. Now, what I'm doing is I'm tagging a decision to, only breathe clean air to a very positive emotion. Just notice how good you feel, how positive you feel. Uh, um, that wonderful sensation that comes from breathing only clean, fresh air. From now on, you choose only to breathe clean, fresh air.
now I want to go camping.
Well, that speaks to the literalness of he called people who quit smoking clean, fresh air people. So there's lots of different ways of putting things, but you try and make suggestions positive. In pain management, for example, you no longer feel the pain. The pain is gone. You say things like, just notice how comfortable that sensation is feeling. And imagine a cool blue light, just a sensation of cool blue light moving through the affected area. Just notice how your shoulder likes the cool blue light coming through, and how it's going from a red to an orange to a cool blue, a cool, comfortable blue. And notice how comfortable you feel and how you can feel comfortable this way anytime. So the suggestions are very positive. And so I'm giving you a very, very obviously a very superficial understanding of all of this. But when I learned how to work with the unconscious mind, and I hate to say it, but I'm a fairly natural trance inducer. When I learned how to do that, it really kind of completed my sense of myself as a psychotherapist. Having an understanding of the unconscious was very, very powerful. And both, just in terms of my own life, but also in terms of my perception of my clients. It's interesting hypnotizing people at different age groups, because I did some pediatric hypnosis. I did hypnosis with teens, which, by the way, is the best group to do hypnosis with, believe it or not. I've done some hypnosis with seniors, and so again, our unconscious mind is always with us. It's just perceived a little bit differently at different stages of life.
Interesting.
They're
I
more
never thought of that.
impressionable, I think.
Yeah. What did you say? Someone said something?
Oh, I was just saying, I never thought about that. That it would be different at different stages of life. That's
Me
interesting.
either.
It's funny, I'll tell you something that's funny is hypnotizing a child, and typically you would do it with one of their parents there, and I did it a few times when around fears. Sometimes children develop fears, and bees or clouds or being outside or something, and hypnosis is very, very effective with phobias in general. But if I put an adult in a trance, they might be sitting there, and there's a number of signs, right from the way their hair falls to what's going on in their eyes. Whereas you hypnotize a child, and it's like, and,
They're the same hypnotized as they are awake.
yeah, exactly. And the funny thing is that you would think, oh man, it's this didn't get anywhere, and you get a call the next day, and the parent would be sitting there thinking, oh, this guy's got quite the scam running, it's hypnosis. But you get a call the next day saying he went out today. I couldn't believe it, and he's not scared of bees at all. It's wow, it's really cool, and it tells you that whatever was going on with the fidgeting and whatnot inside, the unconscious mind was still responding to the process.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so it's if we understand that it's a very natural part of who we are, our unconscious minds, our ability to induce trance states, it makes it simpler. The power of positive suggestions, if they go in through our unconscious mind, and you liberate the unconscious mind to a certain extent by inducing a trance, or even a calm, quiet state, and a repeated positive suggestion, you'll feel very relaxed. When you do an induction, you might say you're breathing in relaxation, breathing out tension, breathing in relaxation, breathing out tension. More and more with each new breath, just noticing the clean, fresh air coming in and the tension going out. So very simple.
Excuse me. We actually do that every morning with our Qigong when we're practicing Qigong, because you breathe in love and you breathe out peace. And, it's just a lot of stuff like that. There are 2 questions for you from the Peanut Gallery. Kelly Marshall said, with regressions, is there always a lesson to be learned, or can it just be a pleasure trip? And then there's another question after her.
Just in the context I did it, I always had a reason, that was a collaborative reason with the client. It was very important to develop some intent behind it. And having some sort of little catchword. I used to have a brief treatment. I don't know if anybody knows what trichotillomania is. It's most commonly manifested in young girls who start pulling their hair out, and they can actually do quite a bit of harm to their scalps, and it's obviously embarrassing and unsightly. And we would develop a statement of intent. I'm going to honor my hair. I love my hair. I'm going to enhance my hair, something along that line. And we develop it with the parents and the child and myself. So you develop an intent. In terms of a pleasure trip, yeah, I guess you could. We do versions of that when we go into our imaginations. And since many or not most of us are writers here, we're kind of used to doing that anyway. But yeah, it it could be done, and it could just be done. You know, there's some really cool things. I got a couple of tapes on which are essentially pleasure trips to relax you, you know, and magic carpet, and it takes you to this pool, and you lie in the pool, and it washes away all your stress. And it's like a trip to the sauna, except in your head.
Yeah, that's what you do, you know, when you're going to have childbirth without any anesthesia or anything. That's exactly what you do, is take a pleasure trip someplace else where your body is relaxed. Don't look behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Marjorie Deering says, are there people who are actually resistant to those kinds of suggestions? I once bought my sister tapes to listen to, which helped her quit smoking. They worked, and she was angry about that because she liked smoking. She literally forced herself to smoke again until she got over those positive suggestions that got her to quit. Yikes. Oh my gosh. Oh, wow. Okay.
In a way, those are two different situations, Marjorie. First of all, for the first question, actually, I'll do the second question. People who are addressing bad habits like smoking, that is a decision, a conscious decision they have to make about quitting. And I've more than once taken somebody right to the point where we were going to really put the nail in the coffin of the smoking, and they said, nope, I'm not doing it. I like it too much.
Wow.
The other thing about, and this is particularly true of smoking, is that if you regress someone, which is part sometimes of the treatment for a habit like smoking, they won't necessarily go back to a bad place. They'll go back to a good place. When I started smoking, I felt so independent, and you know, I felt, you know, like I was grown up. I was 15 years old, and my friends would smoke behind the school, and you know, we'd feel really kind of full of ourselves and excited. And that's relatively easy to address in regression just by asking something like, and now at age 45 or whatever you happen to be, do you still need that in order to feel adult and independent? Do you still need that? Well, no, I don't. Then are you ready to begin letting go of the need to smoke cigarettes? Would you be willing to let it go and just breathe clean, fresh air going forward? So that's thing number one, is that, that comes up a lot in smoke ending. And it comes up, you know, in any kind of habit, you know, come up with alcohol or marijuana smoking or something. Anything, you know, that's pleasurable. People might decide they don't want to stop, especially when it looks like they might. The thing about resisting suggestions is it's like resisting anything else. If someone is asking me to do something and I don't want to do it, I'm going to resist probably. You know, somebody said to me, stop painting and writing. Well, I don't want to stop painting and writing, but you know, it takes up too much of your time. You don't make any money out of no, that's all true, right?
Yes, everybody is going. You understand.
We can
still do it.
We relate.
And if somebody asked us to stop, we would resist.
Oh,
now,
yes.
The difference is, if someone came to me, every therapist, whether a hypnotherapist or regular therapist, establishes rapport with their client. They engage with them. They establish some trust. There is a relationship, because counseling is a relationship. Therapy is a relationship. And in that, somebody might say, I would like to accomplish this in therapy. The reason I'm coming to therapy is because this still bothers me. I'm anxious all the time. I'm smoking too much, or you know, something along that line. Well, what would you like to achieve through this? Well, I'd like to stop smoking. Okay. Well, if we start on this, you actually might. It's and again, you bring people along with their intent. You really have to establish that. And if somebody says, I changed my mind, well, they change their mind. Okay, that's fine. If at some point in the future you decide that you'd like to quit, then remember what we talked about. Come back if you need to, or go to somebody else. But just internalize what we learned here, and maybe someday you'll want to take it forward. But if they do want to complete it, you can finish the therapy. And there's one other little kind of funny thing that happens. Sometimes therapy, and this is true of phobias and certain things, is so weirdly effective that not only does the phobia go away, but either they forget they ever had it, or they don't relate it to the hypnotherapy. If you got a group of hypnotherapists together and said the following, everybody in the room would get it. Hi, Richard. Thanks. I'm not going to need you anymore. I quit smoking. I don't know why I went to therapy. It didn't help, but but since I'm not smoking anymore, every hypnotherapist has heard a version of that. And again, it's the disconnect, because your unconscious mind has truly disconnected from the unconscious mind. Wants to protect you, and it wants you to experience pleasure. Prime directives of the unconscious mind. The part of it that wants you to feel pleasure may want you to keep smoking because you get pleasure from smoking. You have to find a way of releasing that. The part of it that wants to protect you may, for example, very common phobia is a snake phobia. And my character, Michael Kurlek, has a snake phobia. I used to get a lot of those. Now, where I live in Ontario, no snake is going to hurt you. But some people can't go outside. They can't go into the country. They can't go to the park because they're scared they might see a snake. I know you're probably in a jurisdiction where snakes can hurt you, but they can't here. And
why we don't go outside.
So the unconscious mind in that case is trying to protect someone. Maybe they had a scare when they were a kid. Somebody threw a snake in their hair, or
Yikes.
A rubber snake, I hope.
That's a brother thing that happens when you live in the South.
I was on a hike with a bunch of kids once, and this kid found a snake. Next thing you know, it was the girl in front of him, her hair. And again, snakes are harmless where I live, but lots of people are very frightened of them, and it can be debilitating.
We have them falling from trees here.
Yeah, it's
literally they do. They do. Yeah,
happens.
Yeah,
phobias can be so extreme, but again, it's your unconscious mind. It wants to protect you. You always assume that the unconscious mind is acting with good intentions. I do this terrible thing, or I have this bad habit, or I can't go outside, or I drink 10 beers every night or something. All those things you interpret as the unconscious mind trying to help the person, and you frame up the intervention around that, so that, say, are there other ways that you could achieve some deep relaxation without the 10 beers? Are there some ways that you can address some of the issues so they're not so frightening that you have to numb yourself with alcohol? So again, your unconscious mind, when you begin to understand it, wants the best for you, and your attempts to influence your unconscious mind will work if the unconscious mind begins to believe that's what's best for you.
Richard, I have a question. With all the people that you've worked with and brought through past life regressions, do all of them turn out to be like kings and queens and famous people and rich people and that sort of thing in their past lives?
Nope, none of them.
Wow.
Well, Richard said he was, a
Oh.
black person working.
Right. Well, I just
Yeah.
wonder in the overall, that seems to be like when we hear people talk about that,
Yeah, that's
doing
what they
that,
always say.
they always say, well, I came back and I was,
Princess.
a princess.
In Charlemagne's court.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always
I've heard Charlemagne in several of people's past regression.
famous rich people.
He got around, I guess.
Or
Richard,
Cleopatra.
Cleopatra's a big one. She's been
She had
around.
so many people living in her noggin. Yeah.
But Richard,
Maybe it's the people I've been working with. I haven't run into a Cleopatra.
Oh, you're working with real people, and we're just working with.
I wanted to ask you to tell, to share with everyone listening to the podcast what you had shared with Rob and I the other night about the Indigenous person whose brother died on the way to the hospital. Do you remember that?
I was going to say too, Mom, in relation to what Dad just asked,
Yeah.
Richard, I think you brought up at the beginning that a thing that struck you about when you did past life regressions with people is how ordinary things were, the things that they remembered. Mm-hmm. They were like every day. It wasn't anything extravagant or, I was a queen, or anything like that. It was more the everyday and mundane things, right?
Yeah.
Seemingly innocuous things.
If one of your theories is that the unconscious mind is trying to teach a lesson to just somebody in therapy, then they wouldn't necessarily go to some grandiose place. They would go to some place that they could access the information around the lesson.
Like it was relatable to their current situation almost, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's easily applicable to your current.
Yeah, and your unconscious mind would decide that. It always circles around, and it is always something that is applicable to somebody's particular situation in the moment. I'd actually rather not talk about that one story, Joan, or Rob.
All right. I was
on
going
the
to,
podcast.
that's what I was asking.
But I did, just for the benefit of this particular group, I did mention my trip to Port Arthur.
Yes, they would really like to hear about that.
I looked up some pictures of it the other day. Now, does anyone here know what the penal colony in Port Arthur was?
Yes, we do. We do.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone else does.
No.
I do not.
Starting in the 18th century, the British started doing what they call transportation for criminals, often for very minor things, to Australia. It was an alternative to hanging them. And a lot of these criminals hadn't done anything all that bad, but they were sent on a ship away from home forever to Australia. If they could just be sent there, or they could be sent to prison there. And the most notorious prison was Port Arthur, which is at the southern tip of Tasmania, which is the southern island off Australia. And it is a remarkable place on all kinds of levels. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And when I went there in 2002, the first thing you saw when you walked in the door were a series of photographs on the wall of ghosts that visitors had taken. which is a little statement about what you're about to walk into. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. Grassy and full of ruins and beautiful trees and by the side of water. And the thing to understand about it, it was started in 1830 and ended towards the end of the 19th century. But there wasn't a lot of things like bars and cells there. There were cells, but considering you were surrounded by jungles full of poisonous things and water full of sharks,
Crocodiles.
you weren't about to walk out because it was just too risky and too dangerous. The thing that's frightening about this place, aside from the fact that it's considered one of the most haunted places in the world, is that up until that point, if you were punishing a prisoner, you beat them. You whip them or something like that. They decided it was more humane to use psychological abuse, and they often use sensory deprivation. So if you messed up, they might put you a hood on your head and prevent you from any kind of contact with another human being for days at a time. You might march in a group without touching anyone or being allowed to talk to anybody with this hood over your head. And it drove people mad. As bad as that sounds, there was a little ferry boat there that took you on a short ferry to an even smaller little island in the water. And it's called Pure Island. And it's pure in the Latin sense, meaning child. This is where they kept children. Children as young as 9-year-old were brought from England and stuck on this island, which is full of graves of children who died of infectious diseases. So I spent the day wandering around this place, and I went to a place called the Parsonage, which is supposed to be one of the most haunted houses in the world. And I wandered around the parsonage. It was a bright, sunny, beautiful day, middle of the Australian summer. But your imagination is running away when you go in the places where they kept the prisoners. You go in this parsonage, and I was looking all around, and I was taking pictures. And at the end of the day, I met up with some friends that I'd gone with, and they said, "Do you want to come back for the ghost tour at night?" And let me tell you, nothing could have induced me to go on the nighttime ghost tour. Broad daylight was quite enough. And again, there's nothing scary there except your imagination and whatever else was there. Now, the one little woo-woo thing, aside from my imagination running riot, and the fact that if any place, I don't see ghosts, but if any place is haunted, this is the place, is that I took pictures all around there. I'm not a good photographer, but I've taken pictures my whole life. And I had read somewhere that orbs sometimes appear in photographs of haunted places. And, it's never happened in any picture I've ever taken, except in that parsonage. Every picture had more orbs floating around. You could barely see the actual picture. It was the weirdest thing. And I don't even know if I still have them, but, again, that wasn't my imagination. And, again, it's quite a coincidence considering I've never had that happen again.
Yeah. What did the orbs look like? Were they large or small? Or?
They were small. It was almost as if somebody had taken one of those things, that soap and the little ring where you blow the bubbles. Yeah. Except they were all small. And they're especially clustered around a fireplace. And just this little empty room, just kind of left the way it was. Now, there's something else about Port Arthur, which is even more disturbing. In 1996, a crazy man walked in there after killing his family and proceeded to murder 35 people with a gun. the worst mass murder in Australian history. So not
Oh.
only do you have this place with this horrifying psychologically abusive history, but you have a recent, and I went there in 2002. I read today it was just 1996. So it was only 6 years before I was there that this man had shot 35 people to death, just tourists like me who were wandering around.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
So again, it's one of those very lovely places that has some very horrifying things behind it.
Wow. That's crazy. That really is wild.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to wonder if it was if it was the essence of that place that drew him there to decide to do that right there after killing his family, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. There was a thing there. You know how you go to some of these tourist things and people dress in period costume?
Right.
And they don't do that there. The staff don't. And I remember asking, either reading something or asking one of the staff why they didn't. And they said they took that place far too seriously to try and emulate the people who'd been there.
Yeah.
They just didn't feel it was appropriate. They knew terrible things had happened there.
Yeah.
And as lovely as the place was, they understood that it was a place, you know, of horrors, really.
Mhm. Yeah. That's really bad. So he had killed his family somewhere else and then came to.
I don't remember the whole story. I think he had killed someone in his family. I don't know whether he killed his whole family, but he went there, and you know they eventually had some sort of special police unit capture him. He's still in jail. He's still alive and in jail. But he did it was the biggest mass murder in Australian history, and you know, so it's a very unusual place, and Tasmania itself is lovely, lovely. It looks like the English countryside, and it's got all kinds of beautiful things and countryside, and if you're at the south end of Tasmania and you look out into the ocean, the next thing you would see, if you could see 1,000 miles, would be Antarctica. So it's a very interesting place to visit.
Yeah. I would love to go there. That's been on our bucket list for a long time, Port Arthur, but not only because it's beautiful in Tasmania, but you know, because it's reputedly very haunted.
Yeah, it's you know there's other things in its history. They did murder all the Aboriginal people on the island at one point, and
Wow.
and this is lesser, but it's still disturbing. They murdered all the Tasmanian tigers, and which was a very unusual marsupial, and so again, it's a contrast between the beauty of the place and the serenity of the place,
Wow.
and you know some of the darker things in their history.
Yeah. All the really horrible things that happened there. That really is very wild.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, Joy, you had something happen recently, didn't you?
Oh,
Want to talk
if you
about
want,
it?
if you want to talk
to.
about
You
it,
don't have to if
have
you don't want to.
Yeah.
no, it's just, we've, you know, we have a new puppy, and in the last year and a half, we lost two of our dogs, Bailey and Jake, to medical issues. And so we, Lucky's like about 4 months now, and we have him like crated at the end of the bed. And a couple, actually, something specific happened last week too. And because I often hear when we have to get him up in the middle of the night, Terry, my husband, will take him out in the middle of the night. And and then I wait because I kind of get down and unbuckle him because his crate is, is kind of down at the bottom of the bed. And so I kind of wait till he gets back. And when he comes in, if socks are around, he likes to chew them up, and he'll go grab them instead of go back in his crate. And so I took my socks off and I put them by my pillow. And so I would make sure that I didn't put them on the floor. And then he came jumping back in, and I went down and I unharnessed him and everything and put him in. And the next morning when I woke up, one of my socks was in the cage with him, and my other sock was by my pillow where the other one was. And but also before that happened, I heard like little footsteps running in, and we have several times. And then, when I would look, they're not back in. He's not there. And so anyway, so we've had little suspicions that maybe that Jake or Bailey are maybe in the house or something. But a couple of days ago, I was in my office, and actually Loki was, and I have a little playpen for him, and I was working, and my husband wasn't here. And all of a sudden I heard metal crashing. And it was like tambourine loud. And I'm like, what? And then just a big crash and a whoosh. And I'm like, what in the world happened? And I run through the house, and when I get to the laundry room, we have like a bathroom, and then it connects to the laundry room. And that's where the dog's food is. And we had this 12.5-pound dog food that was very securely against, because we're doing two different dog foods. One's in a like kind of a miniature garbage can kind of thing, and with a top on it, and the bag was sitting securely against it, and it's Velcroed. And that bag it's in front of the washing machine. So if it fell over, it would have hit the washing machine. And if somehow the Velcro had come undone, which I don't know how it could, it would have all rolled underneath there. But there was nothing metal anywhere that was knocked down or anything. Nothing happened to the garbage can, but it was turned sideways and opened and all out into the bathroom. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, there was nobody there to blame it on. And there was no way that the bag would have fallen sideways like that. And there was no metal. And the whole time I was in there, it was so loud that Loki was just barking and going crazy because it was so loud. And
Loki was in his playpen in your office.
He was in his playpen in front of me. Yeah. And then the whole time he was just that I was in there. I finally had to come in and bring him a peanut butter cone before I cleaned it up, which that was no fun. But anyway, because it's like it turned itself, because it was flat up against the wall. And if for some reason it had fallen over, but it was turned sideways going this way through all through the bathroom. And it was like, wow. I have no idea where the metal clanging came from. The only thing that could have clanged was if somebody had knocked over the little garbage can when, it just has a little top on it. So it would have been, if anybody hit it, it would have been easy that the top would come off. But that one was completely solid. And so no idea what that was. So we decided crazy. It's one of the boys.
Bailey.
But a lot of times I'll feel a pull because now Loki does that. He'll pull, which the dogs do, but Bailey would do that too. and I'll catch myself going, "Stop, Bailey!" But then I'll turn around, and then I think, "Well, that's stupid. It's Loki," but there's nobody there. So anyway,
Well,
it's
you,
just been
you named the dog
really
Loki.
Loki. Yes.
Yeah. Loki is living up to his name, it sounds like.
Yes, he is.
except Loki's nowhere around. It's some
No, but he
invisible
wasn't around. He wasn't around
Quite a
any of that.
trickster.
I mean, he doesn't know stuff on his own that he doesn't need any help.
That's true, probably.
We had this one little Chihuahua. His name was Tito, and he had died when he was 14, and we had him cremated. And a friend of ours was our veterinarian, and just neither Rob nor I had ever gone to pick up his ashes from our friend's office. And our daughter Patricia one time was watching our other dog. We had two dogs, a big German Shepherd named Raya, and then we had this little Tito, little Chihuahua. And Tito had passed away, and Raya was still alive and well. And so Patricia was over letting the dog Raya out when we were on vacation and bringing her in and feeding her and all that stuff. Well, when she would used to have to do it when Tito was alive, she had to let Raya out by herself and bring her in, and then let Tito out by himself and bring him in, because Tito had a Napoleon complex because he only was, a little tiny thing. And the German Shepherd was like, she was like 150 pounds. She was a big girl.
Big dog.
And he would think that he was the boss of her, and she did not think that he was. And so she would pick him up by the scruff of the neck like a puppy and shake him. Okay. But he was so little that she could hurt him. So we kept them separated because he was stupid and wouldn't work, right? So he had died, and she was there letting Raya out. And every time she would let Raya out, Tito would bark and bark and bark because he thought he should be the one being let out first. So she let Raya out. Tito's dead, right? She hears Tito barking and barking, and she goes to the slider in the room where we kept him and knocked on the glass and said, "Be quiet, I'll let you out next." And she went and she brought Raya back in, and she went to our bedroom to let him out. And then she was like, "Oh, crap." What the heck was that? Tito isn't even here. And we would feel him jump up on our bed. He used to jump on our bed and sleep with us. And we, it was a distinct feeling. And we would both say, "Move over." And then we'd go, "Oh, he's not alive. He's not here."
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
All of that ended when our friend Bruce drove up to the house one time, and he said, "Here, take him." And he had his ashes in the urn. Never happened after that. That's crazy, right?
It is.
So I just want to tell you something really, really funny, real quick. We had him. We took him when we took him to the vet. There was a
Loki?
golden retriever there that just started barking like crazy. Well, scared him to death. He just peed all over the place. And then he was a wreck. I mean, and he wasn't used to being around dogs, but I mean, he was just a wreck all the way in, and then just very, very hyper, and which he hadn't been before. And when the doctor came in, or veterinarian came in, and then I said, well, he was fine until that big golden retriever scared him to death. And the assistant right there said, "Oh, that was Thor," which it really was.
That was Thor and Loki.
Oh, my goodness.
I thought that was funny.
That's really funny. You wanted to say something, Robert?
Yeah, I have a question for Richard. Are people ever aware of past lives without past life regression? Do they have some conscious memories?
Well, if you assume that our unconscious is active in us at all times, and our unconscious is driving us, I would say yes. And even simple things like responses to certain things, deja vu, things that don't make any sense. Why do I have these particular quirks? Why do I like this but don't like that? Why do I respond to this person a certain way? There'll be associations from perhaps others, maybe some I'm not conscious of, but it is conceivable that certain things will come through time. Certain things will have deeper roots. And when I've talked to psychics in the past, and a couple of them told me that I have paintings hanging around Europe, which obviously I didn't paint in this lifetime. But it's interesting how that works. Why do we like certain things? Why do we like certain colors? Why do we have certain quirks? Some of which don't seem to make any particular sense. If we have kids, we know that our kids are completely their individual selves, and that all our kids have different personalities, some of which are not explained. My daughter's a chartered accountant, and considering my wife and I can barely add 2 and 2, that's quite something. I'm not sure where she got that, and but she was born with it, because the first time she encountered a spreadsheet, she explained it to the accountant. Where on earth did she get that? How does somebody acquire a talent? It's interesting the way that works.
Well,
Okay.
I've heard lots of stories and read accounts of children that will tell their parents about who they were in a past life and what their name was and the house that they lived in and all that. I mean, there are a lot of stories that you can find that are like that, of children saying those things. So without being regressed, they just say they
Wasn't
used
there
to be
one
that
with,
person.
like one is with somebody that was, they were from they described this place in England and the cottage and everything, and they found out and it was somebody from America, and I mean it was like a child, and that place actually existed, and I mean a lot of those things were like that the child could have never seen it before, So it's in there. Those kind of things are really interesting. Have you had anyone that you've sent in a past regression other than yourself? Because I mean, I know you don't know 100% that that's in your ancestry that was the person, but that's a pretty amazing thing. Has anything like that happened with any of your patients that as they've regressed, that they have found that something that they discovered is in their ancestry, or evidence of that having been?
What I would say is that a lot of people have had things that seem to make intuitive sense for them. And, it circles around to my cop-out from before, which is I don't really know where that comes from, whether it comes from some sort of past experience or not. And just everything I was doing was always very purposeful. If you're doing therapy, by the way, one of my hypnosis props is behind me, and if you just look over my shoulder, you'll see a painting, and just rest your eyes on that painting. Just focus on that painting, and after a while, it may become more focused, or come out of focus, or may just be in a circle by itself. But anyway, it's just when I started doing a remote therapy, which we all did during the pandemic. I used that painting behind me, or one like it, as my prop. So, but it's again, you've opened up a side of yourself and different people are going to interpret in different ways. Some people are going to be very materialistic. If I was hypnotizing someone from this group, it would be far more likely that people would, let's just say, be more open to some of the um, different kinds of explanations, maybe about past lives or maybe about spiritual matters. Whereas with someone else, kind of a I don't believe any of that crap kind of guy, I might just say, hey, we have metaphors in our minds, and I think this might help you. And you don't have to think of it as woo-woo. You can just think of it as one of the marvelous things your brain does. And as a therapist, my job was to work with lots of different people, so with lots of different belief systems. There are some, and again, some people, many Christians, for example, will worry that they're handing their mind over to something other than God, and it will disturb them. And I'll give them my take on that, which is your unconscious mind is your mind, and nobody's going to be in charge of it other than you. I might be a guide, but you're not turning anything over to me. But again, I always respected, obviously, people's decisions, because people have to feel in the end that they've driven most of it. That's quite important. Therapists shouldn't be the ones who fix stuff. People fix things,
Right.
and at the end, you want them to say, "Thanks, you did your job. Here's your money," and leave happy. To know that they did some work to make themselves better. That's the way therapy should be.
Yeah, that's how it was for my son too. Like he had some severe nighttime anxiety. And the main takeaway from therapy for him was that he didn't need anything outside of himself to be able to face the fear and address the fear. It was within him all along, and she just helped him to get there, right? And I think the cool thing and what I liked about what you were saying is I feel that way about anything paranormal, that whatever it is, even if it's something that our brain is doing to help us process something or understand something, it's just as cool to me. If we one day can explain everything paranormal with something that's scientifically, okay, we can prove this is happening within our own brains, it's just as exciting to me to find that out. You know what I mean? It's not any less interesting or disappointing if I find out it's something happening within my own brain to process what I'm experiencing.
Mhm.
It's just as magical, in other words.
Just as
Along
impressive.
those lines, you had said that, you can bring them up and up and up, and here's a line, and above the line is the future and below the line is the past. Have people ever gone forward into the future and experienced something and brought it back?
Yeah, I took a brief workshop with someone who did future hypnosis, taking people into the future. I used to do a version of that. I was talking about trichotillomania earlier, and I had this whole little thing where I took someone down a path, and at the end of the path, there was a bubbling brook and then a fog. And I would say, beyond that fog is your, say it was an 8-year-old, your teenage self, your young adult self is there with gorgeous, beautiful hair. Go over the fog and have a private conversation with her about how she did it. What made her resourceful, how she feels about having beautiful hair, how the two of you were able to achieve beautiful hair. And then I would send them over and leave them for a bit. Time is distorted in hypnosis. And then and now just say goodbye and thank your future self for the wonderful advice she's given you. And when you're ready, just step through the fog and over the brook and back onto the path. As we walk back along the path, all this information will be absorbed in the deepest levels of your body, mind, and spirit. Your body and your mind and your unconscious mind will understand, will know exactly how you made your hair so beautiful. It's going to happen because you know now. You've spoken to your future self. So that can be very powerful. And it doesn't mean that somebody goes into the future that's going to be. But typically, people who are struggling have very dismal visions of the future. They're pessimistic. They lack hope. And if they can begin to formulate, when I worked with Indigenous kids, I'd say his name was John. Tell me about John the Elder. In Indigenous communities, elders are revered. It's very important. People listen to elders. And I used to say to my Indigenous friends, when you're a revered elder, my kids are going to be trying to figure out a way of getting me to a nursing home quietly. And but anyway, I would say, tell me about Elder John 50 years from now. Again, I was just asking them to expand. People who are struggling, their horizons narrow. Sometimes they literally have tunnel vision. And I would try and find ways of helping them expand that vision. And that's what future hypnosis does. I haven't done a lot of it, but I've done a little bit of it every now and again.
Isn't there a slight danger with that if they get to that point in their lives and they don't accomplish? Or do you think they always do because now they have the mindset to do it?
I think it becomes easier to do it. We don't know what's going to happen in people's lives,
Right.
so we don't know. But what we do know is that visualization, setting goals, belief in self, they're all good things. And someone who doesn't have those things is going to struggle. And again, it's expanding this narrow focus into something that's broader and bigger.
Yeah, it's just having a vision board where you put pictures of, goals that you would like to achieve, on the vision board within the X amount of time or whatever. And if you don't achieve it, I don't think it's too terribly disappointing. At least you've, walked towards that goal. You gave it a shot.
You leave that sort of thing. That is actually one of my stronger beliefs about therapy is, you expand people's minds without locking them in. I've always had an objection to very goal-oriented therapies because you never set somebody up to fail. You're going to accomplish this, this, and this while you're in therapy, and we're going to write it down. The reason you were saying, Robin, is you don't want someone to fail at therapy. You don't want somebody to fail to meet the goals.
Right.
Suddenly they're reliving their ability to live, let people down. So you definitely don't want to ever fall into that trap if you're a therapist. And that's, again, that's part of being a clinician, though, is understanding how potentially to expand people without trapping them or having them, setting people up for failure.
Right. Okay.
Well,
Makes sense.
this has been really fascinating, and it really did tie in with last month's teaching that you did, Beth. I think really well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's very nice to meet all of you. I've been hearing a little bit about all of you from Rob and Joan, and pleasure meeting you. And I'll certainly be wishing you all well.
Well, thank you. This has been great. Very informative.
Yes.
Good. Good.
Paul
I'm glad.
Hollis says, very fascinating show tonight. Thanks, Richard and everyone. It was really fascinating,
Yeah.
wasn't it? I mean, I can't tell you how much my mind is like, boop, boop. It's going crazy. I was thinking about Chris Christmas. Chris Christmas, we
Didn't know
didn't
you were
even know
there.
you're in the audience.
Welcome.
Hello. Thanks for a fascinating show. Joe Conner said, whoop, very interesting show tonight. Thank you, everyone, especially Richard, who I'd never before heard say so much in one meeting. LOL. Well, that's because we gave him a chance to talk.
There you go.
CW CW says, great show. Thanks, Richard, and good to see you all. Chris Chrisman said, I was quiet. You were a quiet little mouse in the corner. But one of the things that's going on in my brain is, and I know I've talked to you about this before, Richard, is the fact that some of our friends that have been in MUFON and been, field agents and stuff like that, and actually field directors, have felt that I was, abducted by aliens. I don't think that I was, and because for a certain period of time, I used to have dreams every night that I was abducted, and they feel like that's the way that people deal with their abduction is that they say they think that it's a dream, they don't think that it's real, and all that kind of stuff. But just listening to you talk, I think that what I've always thought that it was is what it actually was. I thought it was my brain dealing with like fear of rejection. I really do. Because in the dream I would ask for help and try to get help and nobody would help me and I'd be abducted. And I think more it was my mind just trying to deal with things that were going on in my life then. Because I was very young at that time when I was having those dreams. And when you're in high school, you go through all that stuff where nobody loves me, everybody hates me, or, you're not the coolest kid on the block or the most
Well,
popular.
like Richard said, the teenagers are the ones that are the most suggestible, right? Isn't that what you said, Richard?
He said they
Easiest to
They're
work
often
with.
very suggestible, and they're often very good subjects for
Right.
inducing trances. And you can see where things can go off the rails. This is one of the reasons why you have to be so careful when you are delving into memories, when you're delving into regression, and where ethics is so important. The opposite of me is someone like a pimp or an abuser or a narcissist who's trying to abuse people or hurt people or wound people. They use the same techniques. It's a technique is only as good as the person wielding it. I have to have humility before the skills that I have, and a lifetime of being a therapist hopefully drilled some of that into me, and the ethical piece. But I've met at least one person who I called an occult hypnotist, and I think he hypnotized and abused psychologically a lot of people. Wasn't a client, so I can obviously not going to say his name, but and the thing that got me was when I finally figured it out, and I thought, I knew this guy for years before I figured it out. I'm an advanced level hypnotherapist with the Canadian Society for Clinical Hypnosis. What's this doing to people who don't get this? It was disturbing. And again, it's the techniques of abuse are not necessarily different. What's different are the intentions, the ethics, and the morality behind it.
So gaslighting is actually a type of a technique of hypnotizing.
Could
Because
be. Yeah.
that's what narcissists do, is they continually tell you what you are, what you think, without you being able to say what you are, say what you think. They're constantly
If
telling
you
you.
look at the movie Gaslight, of course they're playing with the lights and denying it. The Ingrid Bergman character is vulnerable. She's frightened. And she's almost by definition in a trance state. And the character who plays her husband, or the guy who plays her husband, is making suggestions and suggestions and suggestions
Yeah.
that are evil. It's again, it's a horrific thing, and you really have to be careful of what you're doing and approach it with humility. If you start using hypnotic techniques.
Yeah. Yeah. We're glad you're ethical.
I am
Yeah.
too. Anyway,
And
it's
I
been a
hope your
pleasure.
dentist friend was ethical. I'm sure he is. Just making a joke. Yes.
Well, we're pushing again close to 2 hours. So
Oh my gosh, we should
Yeah,
let
we
you
should
go,
probably
everybody. What were you going to say?
I was going to say our next show will be on April 24th,
Okay.
which is the last Thursday of the month. And our guest, we've got a guest lined up who's
Oh, yes.
an American Cherokee tribe member. And
He
he's
works
going
for
to tell
the
us
tribe.
about, he works for the tribe. And he's going to talk about
Tribal stories.
stories and customs and that
And
sort of
also
thing.
about experiences that he's had himself.
Experiences, supernatural
Because he's
experiences.
fascinated
Yeah.
with all of this.
So it's going to be
That sounds
fun
great.
and interesting.
It will be really
Another
interesting.
point of view.
We did a special podcast with him as a guest because he's written books that are teaching children to read the Cherokee language.
Right.
So, which, like most, like in Ireland, for a long time they lost the Irish language, and so now they're trying to bring it back, and you'll see road signs in both English and Irish, so that people can begin to learn, because once you learn the language you tend to lose the culture. So the Cherokee are trying to bring that back.
Right. So we hope you'll join us then, April 24th, 7:30, same time, same station. We'll be on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So I guess, thank you, Richard, for joining
Thank
us.
you,
Spending your time with
You're very
us.
welcome. It was
Appreciate
Nice to
it.
meet you.
Informative.
Yeah.
Okay.
And thank
Good
you
night.
all, fellow members. And I guess until then,
That's all, folks.
Good night.
Thank you.